morning and welcome everyone. Today I'll be talking about capacity planning at Wellington City Council. This might be a little bit different presentation from the other ones that you're gonna see in here, and I'm intending to show very little of hands-on CityEngine, but talk more about how CityEngine was utilized as a part of the project, much bigger project, and how it helped to work with capacity planning. My name is Zorko Sostaric. I'm from Eagle Technology Group, and the other key people that were involved in this project or presentation were Joshua Patterson and David Mitchell, both from Wellington City Council. So what is capacity planning and why did we had to do this capacity planning? In New Zealand, the National Policy Statement on Urban Development Capacity requires council with medium or high growth council to undertake assessment on 4 different parts, and these parts are demand, residential capacity, business demand, and business capacity. This assessment has to be done for 3, 10, and 30 years of development. And main reason for doing this is that to see if we have a less capacity, there is demand for it. And if there is a less capacity, the council has to respond to this. And the response could be rezoning the land, upzoning, or simply imposing a higher development limits so these capacity meets required demands. This capacity planning has to be conducted for 3, 10, and 30 years in the future. So about the project, how the project was created, how it started, and what the idea of the project is. First of all, like any other local government in New Zealand or anywhere in the world, it has a complex planning requirements. So these planning rules are sometimes difficult to interpret and visualize, and we had to work very closely, not just with the planners but other parts of the business as well. And to make these planning rules into something that's easy to manage and quantify, we had to use ArcGIS Desktop and the CityEngine. So CityEngine wasn't the silver bullet that will do it all. And the part of ArcGIS Desktop that was used was ArcMap at this point, and that was done using ArcMap, and within ArcMap it was done as a model builder models. So there was a whole series of models that was a little bit easier to start with, and it was also serving as a good documentation tool, visualizing the process and outlining all the steps that were undertaken to do this. CityEngine was used to perform processing on a parcel by parcel basis and create these volumes and geometries and do complex geometry testing. After decision was made that everything has to be included from planning perspective, then the project was officially started, and for that Wellington City Council was obviously starting with its own data, and that was the official start of the project because data was readily available, very good familiarity with every aspect of the data and the planning requirements. The model that was adopted was what we call parcel by parcel, so everything is evaluated individually against individual parcels, and these Parcels were treated as unique objects with requirements from the size, the shape, the slope, and everything specifically for each of the parcels. Nathan from Wellington City Council started working within the CityEngine and working on development of rules. This included development of some miscellaneous rules, some more challenging rules, as finding the hard problems first, and then once these are fixed, they're going to be used as utilities for processing of the data. Considering the scope and complexity of the project, the core staff, which is Nathan, Joshua, and David, it wasn't sufficient to tackle all the issues that were brought into the project. So the Wellington City Council staff, like economists, they were engaged as a part of the project to determine the real-life development market cycles. Costing was evaluated by quantity surveyors, all of that to give the more accurate picture of the process and actual end results. In regards to scope of the project, I have a little map here showing in white the urban or developed areas of the councils within the region, and this is highlighting that it's fairly compact area where you have these different centers in a very close proximity to each other. And because of that, we decided to go big. But this go big, what we mean is that we decided to do this for the entire region, because simply if the council boundary stops in one place doesn't mean on the other side of the street it's not having any influence. So that's why we had to go and do this for the region. In real life terms, it means we had to include 4 other councils, as you see outlined in here. The one on the lower right of the map is the council that was excluded from the project because of slower growth rate and slightly different requirements. So we had fairly big scope of project for New Zealand terms, which include a lot of different councils data. Example in here in Kapiti Coast we had 32,000 parcels, Porirua 18, Hutt 16, Lower Hutt 35, and the Wellington is the biggest with 56,000 parcels, and that includes all urban and rural parcels. Just to emphasize again, we had to deal with the 4 different councils that were part of the project now, and they do have a different legal requirements and legal policies and urban policies. So that is posing quite a different challenge. Whatever is in Wellington doesn't mean that will be very similar in other councils. So how the progress went is, well, it all started well. Wellington was used as the main test bed, as a main tool, and things were coming along and testing rules, expanding, including all the specifics or excluding particular zones that were required for these particular planning scenarios. But then Nathan, the principal developer of CityEngine Rules, left Wellington City Council. So Josh and David were kind of stuck with a big project on their hands, 4 councils, and that was on top of regular daily work that they have to handle being employed by the Wellington City Council. Because of that, the project suffered a big slowdown or almost coming to a halt, and then Wellington asked us, Eagle Technology, to come and help with development of the project. After consulting with David and Joshua, we have decided that we can help, and we were quite happy and privileged to be involved in this project. So there were 2 parts that Eagle Technology was involved with. Yongji Zhang worked on Python scripts. So this is where we saw opportunity to move away from using the model builder as primary tool and using Python scripts instead. One of the elements that was coming into that decision is that these scripts can run unattended. It's less overhead because we don't have to have ArcMap running and all the benefits that come from that. In terms of what was the end result is, so the scripts were divided into 8 components for each of the properties, and that was infill, comprehensive development, which includes either demolish or rebuild of the property, terraces, standalone, and apartments. And apartments can be small, medium, and large. So these types of developments were assessed for economic feasibility or what is allowed under district plan, and will it be economically viable for development. All costs of development were applied, including professional costs, site costs, construction, purchase prices, and what is a likely sale price of the development to determine if development does achieve 20% profitability. The most profitable development type is development that is counted in the final results. In order to achieve all that, she developed 20 different scripts, 1 main script with a helping or subscripts with overall almost 3,000 lines of Python code running in pandas, reading from spreadsheets, and running for between 4 to 8 hours. Original models in a model builder run for much longer, almost a day. On my part, I was involved with CityEngine, and as a part of the CityEngine rules, I had to make sure that all of these requirements specific for their councils were implemented and all the exceptions are incorporated in the rules. On top of that, there were some changes, ad hoc rules, little data fixes, and testing of existing rules or particular cases that we have already applied. So when I start looking at a project, there was one big rule file that was applied to all of the parcels. So we had data coming from all different councils supplied as a separate, but we use the same rule file applied to all of these. The rule file has about 3,400 lines with about 196 different rules. So what made it easier for me was that the core set of rules was handling geometry processing and everything else in a consistent way. Doesn't really matter which council or what data it is, but the very big chunk was handling specifics for these particular councils. So if I show you briefly what this is so this is the data for Kapiti Coast in here, and you will see some of the different examples of this, and this is one of the parcels that we can have a look, and you will see what is required to drive this rule. A lot of different inputs, and this frankly reminds me of Complete Streets rule, which is one of the behemoths of the planning rules. In terms of rule itself, you will see that it was written in CityEngine 2016, and it is a fairly complex rule with a lot of case statements that had to handle all these exceptions, and I tried to keep it documented just like Nathan did. And we do have some start rules trying to make it include or exclude every particular council, so these case statements are becoming very frequent. And then we have the true start, when we start doing some geometry testing and processing, eliminating all these different requirements in geometry. As you saw briefly in the CityEngine, the script has 5 big sections. We did look at the setting of the attributes at the very beginning, then geometry operations, then doing analysis and doing reporting side of things. There is a visualization section, but that is not really a primary point of this particular CityEngine project. It is used, and you will see it shortly, but the difference that you saw in here in my example of CityEngine is not quite the final output that could be achieved, because Wellington City Council does have a Lumen RT license, and they use it for visualizing, which I don't have, so I had to disable these within my CityEngine. And of course a number of miscellaneous rules that we use in here. So what kind of changes I had to make to these rules is trying to make it simple whenever possible. So quite often it was, once the data was received from the council, any council, I looked at these requirements and I tried to simplify it and make a single attribute that will be a result of 2 or 3 requirements, and edit as a new field, recalculate values, and then use these values from single field to test within the case functions. That also meant I had to include all the other councils, Capiti, Porero, etc., etc. So we do have these cases handled uniquely, and everything is excluded because we had the same rule used in all 5 different councils. What kind of issues did we see? Well, first of all, we had to deal with the different councils, which have their different data schemas, and they have a different zoning. The zoning between Wellington City Council and Porero or Capiti is quite different. In simple instance, the number of residential zones, number of commercial zones and mixed zones used. So all of these would have to be handled. So we also decided that the best way to get the data from the councils is in a standardized form, which was a spreadsheet. So the spreadsheet was delivered to council, they look at their local rules, fill in the spreadsheet, and then I use that spreadsheet as input for the CityEngine rule, where we had all these different case statements. So that also means including exceptions like subzones from Wellington City Council or Capiti Coast as well. So a lot of work just to get the data from the councils and interpret, and how we're going to put it correctly within our role. Since we do have a different councils, we had to handle these responses, and sometimes it did cause a delay in getting the data back. What kind of output we produce from the CityEngine? Primarily, these were reports, and these reports were used by these Python scripts. So CityEngine processing was first step, and then the Python processing. We also did have some visuals, and this is example of exporting setting, visualizing setting, and facade settings. There is an option to create more detailed geometry than this, and you can see it here. So this would be like a typical weatherboard property, including the fence. And just a reminder that this project was developed in CityEngine 2016.1, and this fence rule is internally developed by Wellington City Council. So this will be Holidays in 2019 or 2018 one, where we have the fences rule. So where are we with this project? The first one is complete. Obviously Wellington City Council was used as a test, but it was run for all of the other 4 councils that we implemented as a part of this rule. And we did find some issues that were unexpected, some data related issues. One of them was for Kapiti Coast, where it just took as 5 times as longer for any other council. So we do look at the specifics of the data for any of these. So what's coming next? It's QA/QC procedures for all of the councils. Wellington is doing their own QA/QC because they're most familiar with the data sets, but also having a first run of QA/QC for data from other councils, and also councils will do QA of the data for their council respectively. Also includes fixing of data issues that we identified and some bug fixings of the rules that we saw if anything was spotted in this particular part of the process. As per policy, we have to redo it again in 3 years, and the big question is how we're going to do this in 3 years' time. We cannot use, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Keep the project ready and keep running it within the CityEngine 2016.1, but 3 years is a long time away, and we could go and use Python within the CityEngine, maybe more, or compile the rules and use them in ArcGIS Pro, or maybe new releases of CityEngine will give us more opportunities to finish this processing. If you'd like to know more specifics about issues and policies and not just purely CityEngine part, you can get the original presentation from David and Joshua at this link. And with this, I'd like to thank you for your time, and if you do have any questions, I would be happy to answer you. Thank you very much.